Cool. All right. So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to be part of Product Camp. You know, I live here in Silicon Valley, where I think the first Product Camp started, and I love attending it. And I'm sad that we couldn't do it in person. I'm really glad that they kind of organized to do this online. So I'm excited to share some advice with you today on how to define your product strategy. Real quick about my background, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, I actually started out with a technical background. My parents got me a computer when I was a kid. I'm really glad that they did. I was an electrical engineering major. And then my first job out of college was actually doing submarine design, which is a very fun job. A little bit like very technical product management, it turns out. And I actually got a master's in industrial engineering. And then I moved out here to Silicon Valley to go to business school. I wanted to get more on the business side of things and get into, commercial technology and software. And when I was at business school, trying to figure out what I wanted to do after graduation, I asked people around and I learned about this awesome career called product management. And the more I learned about it, the more excited I got about it. And I had never done it before. So I asked people, hey, where's the best place to learn product management? At the time, everyone pretty consistently said Intuit. So I was fortunate to interview at Intuit and get a job there. After Intuit, I was a product leader at a few startups. I also was CEO and co-founder of my own startup. I'm the author of the Lean Product Playbook. Came out 6 years ago. It's basically my documentation of the best practices. I'm going to share some advice from that today. How I spend my time for quite a while now, I've been a product trainer consultant, largely teaching workshops for private companies as well as public workshops and public talks like this. I'm also a big believer in building product community, which is why I love Product Camp. And over 7 years ago, I started a group called Lean Product Meetup, where we bring in a monthly speaker. We're over 10,000 people now, and it used to be in person here in Silicon Valley, but with COVID, we've taken it online. So I'll share more about that later at the end of my talk. And you can see my website there, dan-olsen.com, where I post my videos and things like that. So, and I've worked with a lot of companies. I won't go through it all, but big companies, large companies in different spaces. And, it's rare to get so many product people together. We have over 120. That's awesome. We're all usually so busy, heads down working on stuff. It's nice to take time out of our day to kind of try to improve our craft, improve our skills. So I want to start out with a lot of valuable information right away. And the most important information that I want to share is the product manager's motto. Now, the product manager's motto is a bit like Spider-Man's motto. So we have 120 plus product people here. Somebody, if you can chat, help me out. What's Spider-Man's motto? I need a little audience participation at different points in this talk. So we'll use the chat for that. Anybody help me out? Yes, there we go. Craig, Andy was the first one. That's right. So for many people know, right? Spider-Man's motto is with great power comes great responsibility. Well, the product manager's motto, it's similar, but it's just a little different. And it's with great responsibility comes no power. And when I give this in front of a live audience, there's usually people giggling and laughing. And I like to say we're laughing on the outside, but we're crying a little bit on the inside, aren't we? It's like, why do we, why aren't we given more power? Why do we have to, no one reports to us. So we have to influence without authority. We have to beg, cajole, plead to get people to do stuff, right? And, when I share this quote, sometimes, a small percentage of people are like, well, we do have power. And yeah, obviously we have to get power to do our job. We have to earn the power, right? Nobody gives it to us. You don't inherit the power is the point here. And you see the word responsibility there. Product management is a unique job in the sense that, you're responsible for a lot of things. In a way, you're the glue holding all the other groups together. Like, as I like to say, it takes a village to build a product. It's not just the developers. It's not just the designers. It's just not just the product managers, right? It takes a range of skills, and you're kind of the glue. At last night's panel, I use one of the phrases I like a lot, which is, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, so do product managers, right? If there's no one doing QA, well, who's going to step in and fill that hole and do QA? It's going to be the product manager. If there's no designer, who's going to do the wireframes, right? It's going to be the PM. So we're responsible for a lot of things. And as you move up in your career, not necessarily as a junior PM, but as you move up, you're going to be increasingly responsible for product strategy. So that's the topic of my talk today. I'd love just to hear if people want to chat. When you hear product strategy, what comes to mind? Like, what's your definition of product strategy, right? Let's get I have over 130 people, so let's see what you got to say here. I want to hear people's thoughts, if you could, on what comes to mind. Vision. All right, good. Thanks, Mark. Roadmap. Tim, okay, good. Roadmap. Approach, target market, competition, growth. Excellent. Vision and goals, how you meet needs. Excellent. Goals. Excellent. All right, a lot of great answers. Cool. I'm going to jump in with what I think of how to conquer the market excellent, how to get where you want to go. Yep, these are all great answers. Thanks everyone for chiming in. So, a lot of you covered this. It's your plan for how you're going to win, how you're going to conquer the market, how you're going to win in the marketplace, right? It's informed by competitive analysis. People said that, mentioned the competition, right? We need to figure out how we're going to be better or different. One of the other things, and when we talk about vision, we usually talk about long-term versus short-term. And I think it's one of the most important things because we are so dominated by the short term. I like to think of it, I'm a bit of a physics geek, so I like black hole, right? The gravitational pull, like the short term will consume everything if you let it, right? Just getting that meeting done or that email done or that stand-up done or this sprint done. You're so in the moment working on, immediate goals that it's often a luxury that we can pull our head up out and like look, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ahead to kind of plan a longer term vision. So my favorite definition of strategy is probably saying no, is being able to say no, right? And I have a Steve Jobs quote here that I really like. Steve said, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. Innovation is saying no to 100 to 1,000 things, right? And so I like to rephrase it as saying strategy means saying no. Just to pick on our friends in sales for a minute, when a salesperson goes out and calls on a big client like Google, and Google says, well, is your new product gonna have feature A? What do they say? Oh, yeah, it's gonna have feature A, sign the contract. Right. Hey guys, $10 million contract with Google, we gotta build feature A, right? The next salesperson talking to IBM, right? They go and they talk to, them and say, hey, what is your product gonna have feature B? And they go, oh, yeah, it's gonna have feature B. Yeah, feature B for sure, by all means, hey guys, we gotta build, right? So they say yes to everything. They're incentivized just to poke a little fun at our friends in sales. So if you're not saying no, you're not really being strategic, right? And if no seems a little harsh, then just think about it as not now, like not within the planning time frame we're talking about, or not for the product release that we're talking about. That's how I would think about it, right? And then the other last thing, kind of to really get it, is really truly strategic decisions are ones that are not easily reversed, right? If you sail to a new land and burn your ships and there's no way of going back, that's a strategic decision. There's no way you can reverse that easily, right? If you just make a decision and then the next day or the next week you can change your mind, maybe it wasn't a super strategic decision. So anyway, that's kind of when I think of product strategy, those are some of the key points. Somebody actually mentioned how you're going to meet customer needs in the best way. Totally agree, because we want our product strategy to be focused on needs. And so when we talk about customer needs, I want to share an important concept, which is the concept of problem space versus solution space. This is going to be part of the foundation of how we build our product strategy. And I've been talking about this for many years. And so I'm really excited to hear more and more people talking about and using the phrase problem space. So let me explain what it is. A problem space is basically a customer problem, need, or benefit that the product should address. When you think about how is this going to create value for the customer, you're thinking in the problem space, right? If I said, yeah, I think it's too hard to share photos with your friends these days, so I want to make it easier to share photos with your friends. That statement, make it easier to share photos with your friends, that's in the problem space, right? I haven't yet done any solution. I haven't created any solution yet. I'm talking about how do I want to create customer value? What customer need do I want to address? And I'm sure many of you here are familiar with the Agile user story template, right? As a blank type of user, I want to be able to do blank so I can blank, right? That last part is really the essence of the problem statement. Like, why would a user want this? Why would it create value for them? So that's the essence of it. And so writing good user stories grounds you and starts in the product space, right? In contrast, solution space is a specific implementation or design to address the customer need. If the very next thing I said after I said, yeah, I want to make it easier for people to share photos with their friends, if the very next thing I said was, oh yeah, and I launched an app that does that on the App Store, that app would be in the solution space. Or if I hadn't coded anything yet, but my friend Bill, the designer, gave me a set of mock-ups for the app, that set of mock-ups would be in the solution space, right? And this is a learned kind of mindset, right? And the main reason I share this is far too often product teams go rushing into solution space and talking about features and designs before we've spent enough time clarifying the problem space and make sure we're really clear on the problem, right? And I know why. We live in the solution space, right? It's natural because we live in the solution space. So this is like a learned kind of mindset that good product teams develop over time. And as I like to say, developers develop. They have to ship code in the solution space. designers design, they have to create mock-ups and pixels, which are in the solution space. So if developers develop and designers design, how would we summarize product manager's main job? I would use the word define. Our job is to define who are our customers and what are their needs. And so that means, of all the people on the product team, the product manager is the one that needs to be thinking the most about the problem space, making sure we're solving the right problems. And even when you're trying to focus on problem space, it's inevitable for some solution space thinking to creep in. And I call that solution pollution, right? And it's okay, it's going to happen. And you can get people to bridge from the solution to the problem just by asking why. If somebody says, hey, I think we should build feature X, feature X is a solution. And so you can just kind of catch that and say, well, oh, why would that be valuable to a user, right? And then you can start to get clarity on the problem space. This is how typically solution pollution looks in our most product teams here. If you're using Jira, you might have some tickets that say, add a dropdown that does this, build a wizard that does that, add an API call for that. Are those problems or solutions? Those are all solutions, right? Or on Trello here, add a hamburger menu, create a setting screen, add a database table. These are all solutions. And it's kind of funny because when I ask people, hey, who knows the user story template? Everybody knows it. But then when it comes time, when that Jira ticket's open, you're writing the Jira ticket, you get amnesia about the user story template and you just put in what you want people to build. And it's important to keep sight of the problem. And that's the beauty of Jira, is you can have a user story that captures the problem. And then within it, it can have subtasks of what needs to actually be built. So the message here is not never think about solution space. Obviously, at some point, we need to think about solution space, but let's make sure we thought about problem space enough, okay? All right, let's talk about a software example to make this a little more tangible. I used to work at Intuit. One of our popular software packages is TurboTax. The tax deadline was just May 17th, less than a month ago. So I'm guessing a lot of people use TurboTax in the last 2 months or so, or maybe 3 or 4 months if you're ahead of the curve. So I'm going to need a little audience participation in a sec. I want you to think about, those of you that are TurboTax users, start thinking about what is it you like about it. I'll ask you about that in a sec. But it's a solution, right? It's an application. So it's a solution. So it sits in solution space. It competes with another solution, tax cut, right? And in an ideal world, you want to start in the problem space and then brainstorm solutions. We can also reverse engineer. We can go backwards and reverse engineer, right? So for those of you who use TurboTax, can you just in the chat let me know why does it create value for you? Like, what's the benefit that you get from it, from the TurboTax users? So we got over 130 people. I'm guessing we have at least 30 plus TurboTax users in here. All right, we got resolve decision anxiety, cheaper than an accountant, quicker way to file taxes. These are excellent, easy to use, saves time. It knows the rules, simplifies tax submission, paperless, great UI, file tax with confidence. Awesome. These are great examples. These are great. Thanks, everyone. All right, we do have a lot of TurboTax. All right. Stores my tax history, copies data. Excellent. 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 Cool. So it can be helpful, and we want to get that detailed. I'm getting a lot of great detailed problem space statements from people, and it's good to know, hey, what market opportunity are we going after? And at a higher level, an umbrella, like a bucket term that would contain all these detailed problem space statements would be something like, oh, it helps me prepare my taxes. It helps me do my taxes. And what you want to do, say we were the TurboTax team, is you want to start with that high level goal of what's the market opportunity we're trying to solve, and then brainstorm all the detailed benefits you can come up with. And that's what you guys all did. You have over 20 or 30 different detailed benefits here. Things like it can check your taxes, right? And instead of pen and paper, it's a computer. It can make sure you don't make any math mistakes. You can file your taxes. Several people mentioned this. Instead of having to print it out and take it to the post office, you can just push a button and file online. It can maximize your deductions. It can find things you didn't know you could write off to reduce your tax bill. It can reduce your auto risk. These are just 4 examples. I got a lot of other great examples from the audience. So thanks for that. So once you do that, you want to brainstorm all the things you could do. We're not saying we're going to do any of these yet. We're just trying to brainstorm what could we do to address customer needs. And then what you want to do is create a problem space definition. And I will say the problem space can be a bit messy at times. If you look at the chat, you can see that I got a bunch of different answers. No two were exactly the same. Some seem like they might be kind of related, so you have to kind of make sense of this qualitative data, right? And so it is a little noisy, but you will see that there are ways to make sense of it. So let me show you how that typically works. So let's say there are 3 benefits, I call these atomic benefits, right? Help me prepare my taxes, reduce my auto risk, check my return. These are things that customers tell us they would value, right? And we kind of clean up that list and dedupe that list. So we have our cleaned up list of atomic benefits. Well, one thing that we can do is we can talk to customers, and if they say, hey, it helps check my return, we can ask them, okay, well, why is that valuable, right? And we can keep kind of asking why to kind of probe deeper. Now, when we ask why, the way I like to think about it, it's called a benefits ladder. You can think about the first answer they gave you, check my return. That's like the bottom rung of the ladder. And each time you ask why, you're trying to get them to go one rung up higher on the ladder to get to a higher level benefit of what it's really about. And so you might find the way it plays out is like these are distinct at the atomic level, but after asking why a few times, you realize they all kind of ladder up to the same overall benefit. And that would be one about empowerment or confidence. And some people have said, pointed out anxiety, reduce my anxiety. This is an emotional benefit. And the way that this narrative might go is, well, before TurboTax, I had to do my taxes each year because it's required. And I don't know anything about the tax code. I'm not too good with math and numbers, but I have to do it. So it's a very anxious, nerve-wracking situation. But then a friend recommended TurboTax, and next thing you know, it holds my hand. A lot of things that people said, holds my hands, guides me through asking the questions. Next thing you know, I'm done with my taxes. I feel a lot more empowered and confident. That's how that benefit ladder would go. There's a completely different, distinct benefit ladder, has nothing to do with that, it has to do with saving time. Some people mention this too. Save me time preparing. Hey, when I did it by hand, it took me 4 days. Doing it with TurboTax, it takes me 4 hours, right? Or save me time filing, e-filing instead of having to print it out. And then finally, save money, maximize my tax deductions. Someone else also said, hey, it's cheaper than a CPA. So this is an example of what I call a problem space definition. And back to my point about, well, if developers develop, designers design, what do PMs do? We define. This is part of our job, is to understand what could we do to create customer value. I will say we haven't yet kind of prioritized this at all. This is a potential list of what we can do, but it's a full problem space definition. And the cool thing about it is that, imagine you're on the TurboTax team, somebody comes up with an idea, it's gonna map to one of these 3 Uber benefits at the end of the day. Now, if you discover a 4th one, awesome, that's great, let's add it to our problem space definition. But once you have a pretty robust problem space definition, you'll find that all ideas can map to one of the overall benefit ladders that you're talking about. So what you wanna do is create your problem space definition, right? Have these benefits. And now I wanna show how we're gonna use that to create our product strategy. And to create our product strategy from our benefits, we're gonna apply the Kano model. The Kano model was created by Professor Kano during like the auto manufacturing quality improvement movement, total quality movement, Toyota production system, during those years, right? When there was a lot of focus on quality and how can we build better products and things like that in the auto manufacturing industry. So it talks about customer needs as well, not surprisingly. On the x-axis is, hey, for whatever need we're talking about, save money, save time, right? How fully does the product meet the need? From not at all on the left to 100% fully on the right. And then the y-axis is just, hey, as a function of how much the product meets the need, how much user satisfaction results or user dissatisfaction, because it can be unhappy, right? And this starts to seem a little complicated, don't worry. The cool thing about the Kano model is it breaks all the benefits and features into one of 3 categories, right? Let me start with the easiest one, performance benefit or feature. The way to read this graph is from left to right. As the product meets the need more fully, the amount of customer satisfaction increases. It has a positive slope relationship, basically, right? So more is better, less is worse. Let's say we were in the microprocessor chip business and everybody else's chip was 2 gigahertz processing speed and ours was 3 gigahertz processing speed. Well, we'd be outperforming everybody by 1 gigahertz, right? So that's performance. More is better, less is worse. Let's go to cars, talk about cars. Say I was shopping for a new car. I go into the showroom and the 2 cars look about the same. I like the way they look about the same. I read the spec sheet on the window. The specs seem about the same, but then all of a sudden I realize, oh wait, this one car has twice the miles per gallon as the other car, right? All other things being equal, I would pick the car with the higher miles per gallon because for most people, fuel efficiency is a performance benefit, right? More is better, less is worse. So that's a performance benefit. The second category is a must-have benefit. I know must-have is a word that gets thrown around pretty loosely, especially by senior stakeholders, like we must have this feature. But this is a very specific Kano model definition of must-have. What it means, it's easiest to start on the right-hand side here. If the product fully meets the must-have need, it doesn't actually make customers happy because they're expecting the must-have to be met, right? But as you go to the left and as the product, fails to meet that, it goes down, you start to, create increased dissatisfaction. The customers get more and more unhappy, basically, right? Let's stick with cars again. So say I go to shop for a new car, I go into the showroom, I see this wonderful car, it looks great. I love the way it looks. I look at the spec sheet, it seems like it's an amazing specs. The price looks great, but then I peek inside the car and I realize, hey, wait a minute, this car doesn't have any seatbelts, right? I wouldn't buy the car because I'd be afraid of dying or getting hurt if I were to drive it. So seatbelts are a must-have for a car. But if car A has 5 seatbelts and car B has 100 seatbelts, I don't say, oh, car B is 20 times better. Like, once you have 1 seatbelt per person, you can check off the list and you're good to go. So that's the second category. And then the third category is delighters, delighter benefits or wow features, right? The way to read this is, hey, if you don't have this delighter need, it's no big deal because people aren't expecting it to be there. But by adding a lot, you can create a lot of customer value, right? That's the idea of a delighter, right? And sticking with cars, not today, but when the first cars came out with GPS navigation, it was a delighter, right? What need did that solve? We go back to the needs. It solved the need to figure out how to navigate, how to drive from point A to point B, right? And if you think about what solutions did people use, talking about problem solution, what solutions did people use back then? It was maps, right? You'd have paper maps. You would ask for directions. You try to wing it and get lost. For a while we had Google Maps and MapQuest. You would print it out and bring it with you. That was another option. But then the first cars came out with GPS navigation, and it fundamentally changed how you got it from point A to point B. It was a delighter, right? It was a big delight that this new technology could provide. But what happened over time, as we know, more and more cars got GPS navigation. Garmin and TomTom added their add-on units, and now we all just navigate with our phones. So that's the other thing is problem space. Problems don't change anywhere near as quickly. Solutions can come and go to solve the same problem. And that just shows you that this is not a static picture, it's a dynamic picture, so that the needs and features migrate over time, so that yesterday's delighters become today's performance features, become tomorrow's must-haves. And the pace with which that happens just depends on the level of innovation and competition in your space. Okay, so why am I telling all you this about the Kano model? All you need to take away is, hey, there are 3 categories of needs. There are must-have needs, performance needs, and delighters. And what we're gonna do is create a product strategy grid, right? And it's just a table. And what we're gonna do is list for our product category 1 per row. What's the must-have benefit? What's the performance benefit? What's the delighter benefit? So here I've listed 1 must-have, 3 performance, and 2 delighters. And I've kept it generic so you might envision how it's gonna be in your space. In a minute, we'll talk about a real example, okay? The next step you wanna do is create a column for each of your key competitors. And a column for your own product. So here I've listed 2 competitors, A and B, and a column for our product. The third step is you want to rate or score the competitors. How good a job are they doing on each one of these benefits, right? And honestly, low, medium, high is usually adequate, right? It's usually good enough. As long as the ratings make sense. When you look across a row, the rating should make sense. So this is saying, okay, for performance benefit 1, competitor A is better than competitor B by a lot, right? For performance benefit 2, competitor B is better than A by a lot. They're both so-so at this one. They both have the must-have, and competitor A has a unique delighter, right? Back to the Steve Jobs quote. This is where you want to this is where you have to make the tough decisions of where are we going to be the best, right? You can't be the best at all the things. It might be tempting to be like, high, we're going to be high on everything, right? That's not saying no. That's not realistic from a resource standpoint, and it won't create a clear positioning in the marketplace. So this is where you want to pick your battles and really identify where do we plan to be the best? How are we going to better meet this need than anybody else that's out there, right? And so given this competitive landscape, we might go with a product strategy like this. Okay, of course, we're going to have the must-have. We're going to go medium on performance benefit 1. We're not going to try to be better than competitor A, but we're going to go medium there. We're going to say no to performance benefit 2. We're not going to worry about that one as much. And we're going to try to be the best at performance benefit 3, right? These other 2 groups are medium. The other 2 competitors are medium, and we're going to go high. We're going to try to be the best there. Maybe we've identified a market segment that really values that benefit, or maybe we have some solution ideas as to why we can do a better job there. And then we have our own idea for a unique delighter. What matters the most from this product strategy exercise and why you do it is to come up with what are your unique differentiators, right? And your unique differentiators are which performance benefit, usually it's just 1, are you planning to be the best on, right? And you need that at a minimum, right? And then if you also have a delighter, that's great. You don't compete on must-haves. One mistake I see people make with their product strategies or their MVPs is they launch an MVP that only has must-haves. Like, that doesn't create any positive customer value. We want to get clear on our unique differentiators. Okay, so we have another audience participation thing. I need people get ready to chat here. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Instagram, right? Not today, and I picked this because most people are probably familiar with it. Not today, but let me just go back in time and tell you a story. When Instagram first came out, there were already a lot of other mobile photo sharing apps on the market. There were already several other apps out there. And yet when they launched their app, they quickly shut up and became the #1 app. And you don't see that often, but every once in a while, you see a new product enter a crowded product category and it shoots up to #1. Why does that happen? I would argue in every case that happens, you can reverse engineer and explain why that happened using the value prop grid framework that I just showed you, the product strategy grid framework, right? So let's try to do that for Instagram. Not today. If you're really familiar with Instagram today, it's not about today's feature. It's really about, you know, back when they first came out. And so some of you may have been around then, some of you may have not used it then. But what we're looking for is how did they outperform the other mobile photo sharing apps at the time? Or how did they out delight them, right? So let's see what we got. People saying filters, exactly, awesome, filters, cool. So here's the thing is filters, real quick question, filters a solution or a problem? You can answer that for me. Solution, go, that's right. And it's fine, this is what happens, it's totally fine. If somebody comes at you with a solution, you go, great, filters, they were cool. Why do they create value for a user? What's the benefit behind it? If I had asked a user, great, Gopal says, make my photos look professional. That's one thing that I hear. Make them look better, exactly. You hear a lot of different things. Make them look more creative, make them look more unique, all these kind of things, right? We can kind of lump them all together and just say, it makes my photos look better. That's right, cool. So that's the benefit, make my photos look better, supported by the solution filters. Now, was that a delighter or was that a performance when it came out? Yulia Gopal, yeah, it was a delighter. You didn't expect to have these amazing filters, right? You're like, oh my gosh, what are these amazing filters? And you probably saw it from your friends, like, hey, well, how did Bill make his pictures look so amazing? And then you realize what's going on, right? So yeah, it was a delighter. It was a delighter. Now, the interesting thing is, going back to this diagram, we talked about how things migrate over time. If we were to launch a mobile photo sharing app now, and it didn't have filters, what would happen? People would laugh us out of the app store, right? So what happened? It went from being a delighter to being a must-have now for a mobile photo sharing app. That shows you that evolution in progress, right? Because everybody just copied it. Okay, awesome. We got our first delighter, filters that make your photos look better. Any other ideas for other ways that they delighted or perform people? And one thing I forgot to mention, a little subtle on a performance. If you notice the examples I gave, it was like 2 gigahertz versus 2.5, 3 gigahertz, right? It was a numerical thing you could quantify, or miles per gallon. So usually performance is something you can quantify. Let's see what we got here. See if anybody's got ideas on how they outperformed, something we can quantify that they did better than the other apps at the time. Okay, Gopal says square photos. That's a subtle thing too. Let's talk about square photos for a minute. So I remember to this day when I first launched Instagram, like, let me check out this app. I pulled it up and it's like a square photo. I'm like, who gave you the right to crop my photo, right? Because when you hold up a phone and take a photo, it's like, it can be a tall rectangle like this, or it can be a wide landscape like this, right? And look, the photo is going to look good either way because the filters, that's not the problem. But when you try to combine them into a single feed, then what's going to happen? These are going to be fine, but these you got to shrink down in size to fit in the same fixed pixel width feed. They saw that problem coming. They said, you know what? We want the pictures to look good no matter what. We're going to make it a square aspect ratio. So it's a more subtle way that they help make your photos look good. So cool. So all we have left is a perform. I'll give people a chance. So something they did, like, outperformed, something they did, it has to do with time. Yeah, Neil's got it. Exactly. Fast upload, right? They actually, when you uploaded your photos on Instagram, it was faster, right? It was like 2 or 3 seconds faster than all the other apps. Now, those of you in the computer field may be like, well, wait a minute, Dan, the camera's the same megapixels, so the picture's the same megabytes, and the throughput's the same because it's the same 3G or the same Wi-Fi. Well, maybe they have some crazy compression. No, they all use the same compression. So how could they do it? It was actually a clever hack from the user experience design team. The UX design team said, you know what? Because the way those photo apps worked, all the other apps worked, is you'd launch the app, you'd line up your picture, you'd take your picture, and then you do whatever you were going to do with it, right? You'd add the tags, you do whatever, and then there's an upload button, you click upload. Well, the UX team in Instagram just said, you know what? 90+% of the time, people upload the photos. So why don't we just upload it the second they take it? Let's upload it in the background. And then by the time they do what they're going to do and their figure hits the upload button, like 2 or 3 seconds will have passed. So that's how they did it. That's exactly right. Cool. Speed is a feature. Exactly. All right, cool. So we have what we need to recreate the problem solution space diagram here, right? Hopefully this makes sense, right? We have make my photos look good, supported by filters and square aspect ratio, and post my photos quickly, supported by photo upload act, right? So we have what we need to form the product strategy grid for Instagram. So here, what do I have? Must-haves, performance, delighters. We have other photo sharing apps. We have Instagram. We didn't even talk about the must-have. Obviously, if you're a mobile photo sharing, then, let me sharing your photos is a must-have, right? Everybody has that. On the performance benefit, we have post my photos quickly, supported by the photo upload UX hack. Everyone else doesn't have it, so it's low and they're high. And on the delighters, make my photos look good, filters, supported by filters and square aspect ratio. Again, other people don't have it and they have it. So there's their unique differentiators. And I mentioned briefly, when you have a performance, a clear outperform plus a unique delighter, that is a very powerful combo. At a minimum, you need to outperform. But if you can do this creates so much more customer value with your product than the competition. It's going to make everyone kind of flock to your product like you saw there, right? Now, sometimes I give this talk and people go, "Oh, Dan, this is a nice story. How do I know it's not revisionist history? You're kind of connecting the dots after the fact." Well, lucky for me, they gave a presentation about it and where they talked about the UX hack and other things. And I wouldn't expect anybody to know this, but at the time, what their tagline was at the time, was fast, beautiful photo sharing. And this tells me they knew exactly what they were doing. This is a very powerful, concise summary of their product strategy, basically, right? They have their must-have, photo sharing. They have their performance benefit, fast. We're going to be faster than everybody else. And they have their delighter. We're going to make your photos look more beautiful than everybody else, right? So it's just 4 words, but they managed to pack their whole product strategy into those 4 words. And these are very powerful, not only for the product strategy, but for people in the company. Everyone's really clear on how we're going to be the best photo sharing app, right? If everybody knows the tagline, fast, beautiful photo sharing, it can align all the teams and empower all the teams. So I would encourage you to apply the techniques that I mentioned. If you're not clear on your product strategy, brainstorm the problem space, and then categorize them with the Kano model, must-have performance delighters, do the competitive analysis, and come up with how you're going to be the best and what your product strategy should be in order to be the best. So, all right, with that, I want to thank everybody. And I did mention briefly my Lean Product Meetup that I've been running for over 7 years. We have over 10,000 members. You can go to this, URL. I'll put it in the chat so people have it. If you want to join, it's free to join our meetup group. And actually, these days we have a book sponsor. So we're giving out like 50 or 60 books. Nathan asked, is the book as good as the presentation? Well, this is kind of like the movie version. So sometimes the movie is a little better than the book, but the book is much longer and has a lot more content. So yeah, if you like this, you can check it out. There's definitely some other parts of the process that I left out, but feel free to join us. And speaking of the product manager's motto, our next event is on June 24th about how to influence without authority. So you can check that out if you want. And then I'm happy to start taking questions. I would ask people if you could take a brief survey. That would be great. I'm going to chat that link as well. Just let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. If you want a copy of my slides, I can also email them to you there. So it's always great to have that. There's the feedback, feedback survey. That would be great. And so with that, I'll take questions.
We have 1 minute. We have 1 minute for questions.
No, we have 35 minutes total, right? Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. All right, cool. Let's go. Questions. Let's do it. Any questions? You can put it in chat. If you have a question. The above question, Ben. Okay. Yeah, I think subjective is fine. A lot of times all the tools that I have, you can there's ways to apply them very rigorously and quantitatively. You also get a lot of value just doing it lightweight. Honestly, high, medium, low usually works pretty good. And people can usually agree on, okay, yeah, this one competitor is better than this competitor on this dimension. So yeah, good question. And if you can get quantitative, if you're in the microprocessor chip business, then you probably should be keeping track of gigahertz and things like that. But for most products, you don't have to do that. So Rokamamadu specs. Yeah, that's a problem is when you compare on specs, you're basically comparing solution space. So that's the trap that a lot of people fall into is feature checklist. Oh, look at our feature checklist, compare the competition. The problem there is, who knows if that feature really solves a customer problem or not. So I like to ground your product strategy and your marketing more in benefits and problem space than solution space or features. So. Shane, yes, I do have experience with that. Again, it's a learned mindset. So, it's tough. I mean, the odds of like building a solution, having it actually be successful if you don't know that, if you're not clear on the problem, are pretty low.